Well, hello everybody and welcome to today's session, Alternative Approaches Discussing New Options for the Screen Sector. It's great to see you all today and I hope you are well. My name is Gemma and I am from the XpoNorth Digital team. XpoNorth Digital is Highlands and Islands Enterprises mechanism for specialist digital support for the creative and heritage economies across the Highlands and Islands region, and the project is delivered by Ironworks Venue. This workshop is part of HIE's Northern Innovation Hub, designed to build on and accelerate business innovation. It is funded through the Inverness and Highland City Region deal, a joint initiative supported by £315 million of investment from the UK and Scottish governments, Highland Council, HIE and UHI. I am now going to pass over to Ian Hamilton, who is the head of the creative industries for Highlands and Islands Enterprise.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Gemma, for that. Good afternoon. We've definitely just scraped into that. What I really wanted to do was take a chance, first of all, just to explain why we're doing this session and really what it's about. Was that through our support programs, we've had regular comments and feedback coming in from screen producers of all sorts, mainly small companies, but coming back with the challenges that they're facing just now, the difficulties of getting commission, a range of challenges that they're having to look at. And we wanted to have a look at what options there might be that would be alternatives to the work that they're already doing. So really, to be clear, it's not about saying you should do this instead of what you're currently working on. It's other options, things that might be possible. The other thing is this session is really just to run through some of the ideas in the report, get your feedback, your questions you might have, but also to say that this is not a critique on other agencies and other folks' work. It's really just to talk about ideas and what might be possible and think about how we might move things forward. Also, we can't fix everything on our own, no matter how hard we try. So again, it would be great to hear from folk ideas for collaboration, other opportunities, ways that we could maybe take this forward, how you might be involved if you want to be. I've put my email in the chat and I've also put the link to the report. So please feel free to contact me afterwards if you've got ideas and thoughts that you haven't input just now. So if I can start, can I just introduce the panel? So if we can start with you, Donald.
Hello everyone, my name is Domhnall Caimbeul. I'm the Chief Executive of MG Alba, that's the Gaelic Media Service. So I'm also the chair of the partnership that operates BBC ALBA, the Gaelic Language Television Service, and I'm going to be sharing with you some thoughts about that and some general kind of wider thoughts about supply and demand in our sector.
Thanks, Donald. Jessica?
Hi there, my name is Jessica Fox. I'm an author, film director, writer, and also the broadcast and screen specialist for XpoNorth Digital.
And Tim.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name's Tim Wright. I'm based in Glasgow. I'm a recovering management consultant, and I'm also the crowd economy and digital advisor for XpoNorth.
That's great, thanks. And there's an apologies from Ed Hoffman. I'm afraid he couldn't join us because he's stuck on a flight somewhere near Kuala Lumpur, I believe. I realise that sounds like a tall tale, but I'm reliably informed it is accurate. So, right, if we can start off, the first thing I think that'd be really helpful to do is, Donald, if you could give that bit of an outline. I think it sums up, like, talking about the challenges and the opportunities you're seeing with MG Alba and the production companies you're working with, because I think that really sets the scene pretty well and highlights some of the route of travel that we want to look at.
No bother. Let me find my presentation. I had it a moment ago, and sorry about this.
It's got stage fright, Donald. That's what it is.
Yeah, no, I can't see it as I try to share screen. Oh, there it is. I've got it. Thank you, Tim. So, yeah, some reflections really from me. Share a bit of information with you, and hopefully we can discuss some of it that's of interest. So, as I said, I'm the CEO of MG Alba, and I'm going to share with you some kind of information, some thoughts, some perspectives, some of them personal, some of them kind of based on evidence and some numbers as well. So, and hopefully it'll be kind of conducive to a discussion. So look at some context, some supply, demand, and possibilities, basic structure. So first of all, with a language perspective, you probably know that about 1% of people in Scotland speak Gaelic. That number has actually increased in the latest census, but the overall direction of travel for the past 100 of years has been to kind of concentrate or to see the erosion of the language where it's spoken as a community language to the northwest of Scotland and increasingly to the islands of Scotland. But it's not to say it's not spoken in the Highlands as well. It is increasingly actually it's spoken language in the cities of Scotland because primarily of Gaelic medium education. So so that's quite a kind of worrying perspective. It's not doesn't just worry us, it worries people who speak Dutch, Norwegian, Icelandic, as they see their language being challenged by the omnipresence of the English language or the Spanish language for some other minority languages as well. So so people are worried about smaller languages in general, not just minority, but smaller majority languages as the global brands basically take possession of our media and our devices. Where we are with Gaelic media provision, so this is public service media provision. We have a partnership with the BBC, so I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what the shape of our supply sector, this is our creative sector, looks like. And this comes from a report that we commissioned from Charlotte Wilson Research Services and ECOS, and the report was delivered about in November 2023, almost a year ago. So, so it splits the kind of sector into three kind of levels: micro producers, smaller producers, and larger independents. And larger independents for us are quite small independents, really, in the grand scheme of things. But we have quite a strong reliance, as you can see there, on smaller companies between 1 and 3 people or 1 and 5 people, particularly in the factual domain. And when you come to sports, music and drama, it requires companies of greater scale. So you see there that we have, I'm calling this part the tale of two triangles, because this is your standard triangle. It's probably what you'd expect to see. But when we look at where Gaelic television fits nationally, or even television or production for television in Scotland, it's actually more of an inverted triangular kind of thing that I'd like to kind of present, really. And this is based on the research that Synchronicity and Safi Champions did for Creative Scotland, for Screen Scotland, I should say. And you'll find on the website of Screen Scotland quite a lot of information about the Scotland production sector, in particular in the Scottish economy or the creative economy. So basically, what you have is you have got quite strong levels of activity in Scotland in the past 2 or 3 years for the rest of the world. I can put it that for the global market with, for example, Amazon Prime. And Netflix and some movies coming to Scotland for location purposes, for studio purposes, and studio provision is now a lot better than it was. Also incentivized by the high-end tax relief for TV, so for £1 million per hour productions. So that's where all of the growth has come from in Scotland in the past few years. And you'll find that in the report that I mentioned in Screen Scotland's website. You will also see that Scotland for UK, so these are programmes produced in Scotland for the UK, is probably, at least the way I see it, is probably the direction of travel that Channel 4 and the BBC are on at the moment. So as the biggest buyers of programming in this domain, probably looking for less produced in Scotland for Scottish audiences. So that's a direction of travel that Ofcom have agreed with quotas and with local services. I think we'll see more of that. So of that direction of travel, probably decline in that area. And Gaelic television is a small part at that bottom of the triangle, which is, from a funding point of view, been relatively static for a little while now, and basically, sits in quite a tough market when you look at it from this perspective. Just very briefly, what our economic, so from a Gaelic point of view, the economic impact is kind of spread across Scotland, but there's quite a concentration for us, small numbers, but quite relatively large. Part of our spend is concentrated in the Western Isles, and the Highlands of Scotland. That's an important economic priority for us and for the government who funds us. So just looking a little bit further at the other side of this, the demand side, what do people want to watch? What are they watching? Ofcom research tells us that broadcast consumption of live television is going down. You don't need me to tell you that, you know that. And particularly fast in the 16 to 34 age gap, you'll see the dotted black line there. Whereas subscription video on demand has been going the other direction. Interestingly, for younger audiences, the 16 to 34 kind of age bracket, it's YouTube that's kind of coasting ahead quite significantly. I think this is 2022. The numbers will be updated soon by Ofcom. Others have got more recent data on this as well, but I think YouTube takes a very, very large slice of the proportion of viewing time of people and viewers and consumers in this kind of age range. Live TV still accounts for a fair bit. News and sports and probably live music most likely, and you'll see that subscription video on demand is running pretty strongly there as well. We tend to think in this age group, roughly broadcast media takes a third, streamers take a third, and YouTube takes a third, with the YouTube part that's kind of growing ahead beyond that, probably to encroaching possibly now to more than a third, maybe even 40% of consumption time in this age group. With BBC ALBA, we see a bit of a microcosm of this. You'll see on the left, and the blue, the top range, you'll see that the reach of BBC ALBA, the Gaelic language TV channel, into the Gaelic linguistic community has declined in the past 10 years from around 70% to around 45% on a weekly basis. This is broadcast television. The orange lines at the bottom are actually the reach into the Scotland community, so the wider community in Scotland, basically the 4.5 million adults who live in Scotland. But you'll see that actually in the past 3 years that's been static. In fact, last year we had a bit of an increase, probably driven by music and live sport in particular. So we Gaelic television is serving probably 7% of Scotland with live content. On the right, you'll see, more interestingly, that the iPlayer and short form video plays, you'll see short form, and by this I mean short content we have increasingly put onto YouTube, our new brands for learning, and Facebook, Instagram, TikTok plays of short video content, some of it of a marketing type, so basically promoting programs, but actually increasingly not that. Increasingly it's bespoke content to make someone laugh, have a moment, forget where they are, whatever it is. And that's been really increasing strongly, and we're actually beginning to see the iPlayer, having had a good period in 2013, 14, 15, 16, and then tailing off, is beginning to kind of work pretty well for us as well. The reason the iPlayer worked so well back in 2013, 14 was because Gaelic content actually had quite a lot of the airtime and space in Gaelic, and then the BBC developed very kind of strong marketing and promotional kind of strategies. The algorithms started working against us, probably, and more in favour of high-end content. And also the competition, the volume of content. There's about 17,000 hours of content on the BBC iPlayer, but 17,000 hours of content also on the Channel 4 player for context. So it's quite a tough competitive market in there. Finally, just a quick look at really a little bit of a SWOT analysis. So strengths, just on the right-hand side, I think very strongly suggest that authenticity, provenance of content, the passion of our producers, their knowledge and ability, all really strong kind of assets. Some of the weaknesses, probably scale, dependence, capacity constraints, business skills, legal skills within smaller end of and even across all of, I would say, across all of the production part sector. Not every part, but definitely most of it. Some of the opportunities definitely around the high levels of creativity we know exist and that can be released. Opportunities around collaborations, and I think the uniqueness of language, uniqueness of some of the content, and the authenticity and provenance as part of the strengths. The threats, definitely diminishing public funding, a shrinking domestic market, if you like, in overall terms, unless it's for a UK-wide market or a global market. Monetization models there aren't enough of them, and the language itself, facing minoritization in the face of kind of a tsunami of English language branding and content and devices. And so some of the focus areas around how do we, give time, space, investment for the best ideas, identify them early enough, take them out of the hamster wheel of, getting them into production and onto air, take some time, get them developed, bring some stimulus in. Let's see what, could they be fit for a wider market? I think at a business level, there's media entrepreneurship kind of imperatives there. There's networking, co-productions. Definitely, we like them. They're quite difficult to do. They don't always kind of impact the bottom line for producers in the way that they would like, but it's a direction of travel, I think, that kind of helps us with the think local, act global thing, which is, doing more festivals, getting more of our content to festivals and awards, doing more collaborations, share more content, basically build a reputation and credibility and find business models and behind that to make it work. So that's me, really. Here's a clip from our Mermaid show. It's back on. And one of the programs that we're really proud of. But it's an example of really high-end content that is just absolutely staggering in its quality and its potential. So thank you for that.
Great. Thanks, Donald. That's I think a really good introduction. What I was going to say is just if anybody wants to put questions up, if you can put them in the chat just now, and we'll pick them up at the end and try and run through as many as we can. I think what also is really important in Caimbeul is that the story that Donald's telling of what the broadcasters are saying there seems to apply across most broadcasters. That we're starting to see a lot of the broadcasters. We're seeing this kind of change coming up. I mean, certainly if you look at STV and look at the number of production companies that they've bought over and how much content they're creating themselves, and then the streaming service coupled with it, that you can see these changes coming. So what we, following up on the kind of suggestions and ideas that Donald mentioned there, is we put together a group of people from different sectors, including obviously screen and broadcast, and to have a look at what other areas there might be possibilities of doing stuff in, and also what some of the challenges were that we could try to address collaboratively. The first two that I'll mention, we probably won't go into in much detail just now, but I think they are worth highlighting. The first one is around confidence, is that we've certainly seen a challenge in that area, particularly since COVID, and particularly amongst new entrants, is just a lack of confidence that in what they're doing, or the ability to, their confidence in approaching other people to pitch ideas, how they're taking that forward. And I think there is something that we need to look at in that. The other one is, again, about new entrants and things, and it's on careers guidance. There is a lack of good careers guidance very often, and academia and industry are not all of us as well connected and linked up as they might be. Now, obviously, that's a kind of sweeping statement because each university and college has different connections and things pulled together. But we do know that that's been a bit of a challenge, and we've certainly done quite a lot of work over the last few years, putting industry into University of the Highlands and Islands and trying to increase these contacts and make help people create their networks that are going to help them at a much earlier stage. I think, though, the first bigger theme that I'd like to highlight on is about the requirement for digital skills. And that one really is looking at the idea that there are a multitude of platforms out there that can carry content, and that there's potentially ways of monetizing content on. There are also, we highlighted about the fact that brands are increasingly becoming important in this sector because of the way that they've moved in. And I think it's really important that we put some time into thinking about other businesses who are going to require your skills and the skills that you offer, and how they get content out to market. How do they tell their story and get it to an audience? Tim, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Ian, when you were talking about this connectivity, I think that you're right. There's a dynamic that we have moved away a lot from, if you will, traditional networking. But I think the other aspect of it, and you're taking us into that with talking about the different distribution models and new participants in this. I think one of the things that came across to me in the discussions that we had was how film is bleeding into other areas and how other areas are bleeding into film. And so it's the connectivity and the networking needs to explore different opportunities, whether that be engaging with gaming or whether it's new distribution service. So I was just thinking, today we've heard that Amazon have just acquired the Bray Studios, the old Hammer House of Horror studios down in London. So as these new participants come in, your connections are different ones to the traditional, and it's rethinking that model so that the people that you target and want to network with and establish those relationships with will potentially be different from those that went before. I think there's perhaps work that needs to be done, not just to build the networks, but know where those networks are, the different networks rather than the traditional ones. I don't know whether that's chimes with what you found in that set of discussions we had.
You do, Tim. I would add to that, if that's okay. Sorry, Ian, we are totally taking it on a tangent. I totally agree with Tim. I think out of those conversations, one thing that really impressed me, and Tim, this is more your area than mine, but the punchline that we keep on hearing over and over again that we still haven't learned, because I think it flies in the face a little bit of how traditional distributors work, is that you don't need millions of viewers anymore. You really don't. You can actually target really strategically audiences that support the work that you do, that financially can support the work that you do, that might actually be in various different crowds that you haven't thought of. And that you can really team up with different brands and different industries that also link up with those crowds, because basically at the end of the day, it's eyeballs. You know, the thing I'm hearing over and over again from filmmakers, and I see that we have a lot of independent filmmakers here. We have, hi, Ken, people with bigger companies who are actually in a huge sector like animation. One of the XpoNorth Digital advisors, who wasn't, I don't think, on the panel, but talks to us a lot, is from PBS in America. And they're running into the same problems where they're having to fund their own content, sometimes in co-pros, but just like Domhnall said, mostly in-house. But they have a very strong audience, and the audience then links up with, they know who their audience is, and they know their ages, and they know their interests, and it links up with a lot of other industries' audiences too, and there's strength in that. It doesn't need to be millions and millions of people, you just need a strong audience. To that effect, I'm actually going to put a video that I've been watching over and over again in the chat box in case people are interested, that the founder of Patreon did, talking a lot about shifting perspectives about how you engage with your audiences, not just with the content that you're making, but the process that you guys are doing. You know, the animation process is so fascinating that people would engage with the process itself, and also the films that you're making, and there are ways to monetize that and make it efficient for your business. But anyway, I will stop talking because I'm going.
Can I jump in and follow up on that a little bit, Ian, if that's okay? Jess, I think you're absolutely spot on. I mean, the part of the characteristics.
Please do. I mean, this
part of the characteristics of the kind of crowd economy model is that this has disrupted many sectors. So it's just disrupting the screen sector as well, but it also presents new opportunities, and it's reimagining those things. And I think you made a couple of very good points there. Part of the thrust of digital technologies and crowd economy is that it allows you to take ownership of processes that weren't there before. So your ability to distribute content and monetize it effectively actually fall to you in a way that they weren't there. But your other point is a good one, because the relationship is a different one in the context of a crowd economy model, in as much as you're not just transactionally allowing people to consume your content as you would in a cinema context or in a TV. You're building a relationship, and you actually want that relationship, because it is that relationship where the value can be generated. And you made the good point. So I'm not just repeating you. I'm hopefully adding to what you said, Jess, that the numbers required to generate revenue flows in a crowd economy model are smaller than the very transactional ones, and it's recognizing where the value can come from. And you mentioned things like Patreon, and we can think of affiliate models and all of these other things that they go. Not trying to gloss over the difficulties of monetization through platforms, whether it be YouTube or Rumble or whatever it is. But there are possibilities there for producers to actually explore much more independent models, independently driven models than perhaps they would have done before. But you have to understand that the dynamic of the relationship between you and the consumers is not a transactional one, it's a journey one. And that's the thing that a lot of people, I think, find difficult, because you have to invest more time and effort in that aspect than some of the other ones that came before. So
absolutely.
On that one, that particular one, could you say something, Tim, maybe about like how you could collect data on this, where you can ways that people might approach identifying what the sort of genres and things that where crowds are interested, and so how you could build that up. We were talking about validation through the data that you might find on crowdfunding sites and things, for example.
Yeah, so I mean, the analogies we can draw from other industries as well that are using these technologies and platforms effectively in order to change the way that they do business, and they apply in any sector. So it's not something that's the screen and film sector is going to be immune from. So typically, one of the things that's interesting about an organization like Netflix is how they use data. So can we use data? Can we find access to data? And of course, crowdfunding platforms, as an example, are a terrific repository of data sets. Now, there are organizations that scrape those data into bigger, usable tools, and my expectation is that will accelerate more with the use of AI interpreting that data and being much more predictive from it over the coming few years, as AI technology becomes much more widely available to third parties. But you can actually do a lot of interesting analysis yourself by actually trawling through the platforms, because they are big platforms with big data sets that are open to you. You can look at success rates, and in fact, platforms like Kickstarter habitually publish data sector by sector on what's succeeding and what isn't succeeding, what success rates look like, what the typical raises look like, and you can learn a good deal from that. And if we take the analogy of where a lot of organizations are using crowd engagement models to accelerate the business development process, what's distinctive about crowdfunding if you're trying to take any product or service to market is the pace at which you can achieve that, as opposed to a traditional linear model, because you're undertaking all of the activities at the same time, understanding market acceptability of your idea, developing the idea, raising finance, building visibility. You can do this all simultaneously in a crowd engagement model. And so lots of sectors are using this as a way to validate whether their model is a good one or not. So it's a kind of fast fail model. And we've seen examples of that done at a larger scale. So I know, Ian, you're familiar with the Iron Sky model. So the Iron Sky model is a much grander scheme here, but they used crowdfunding not so much to raise funding, although that was part of it. It was really a validation process that allowed them to then approach other funders, so they could actually take a much more compelling proposition to other funders. So there are lots of ways that you can look at using crowd engagement models to accelerate your process, do things more quickly, identify what's acceptable in the marketplace, and build a more compelling pitch to take to more traditional backers and investors. The other thing that I will say is, in traditional manufacturing, for example, as that approaches crowd engagement models, in addition to all of those other things I've already mentioned, it's actually a terrific place to build those networks that you were making reference to, Ian. So it's actually now the case that lots of other participants in the value chain of that sector are going to the crowdfunding sites to find partners to work for. So if, for example, if you are bringing an idea for a terrific new widget to market through a crowdfunding platform, you will have manufacturers, you will have distributors, you'll have other partners in the value chain identify you within the context of a crowdfunding campaign and approach you and offer their services. And it seems to me that that's something that could equally apply in the screen sector. So other participants in the value chain that will take your content to the marketplaces that you want to take them to will be participants there. And part of the trick of doing that crowd engagement effectively is to both identify what it is that you need to make your product or your process and project a fulfilled one. So where are the gaps in partnerships that you need in order to take this to a conclusion, and be very open in the process of doing a crowd engagement process and say, this is what I'm looking for, and be ready with kind of boilerplate agreements, so that if you do get those approaches through that transparency, then you're ready to transact with those third parties very, very clearly. Really, you know what you're looking for. You can enter into a clean transaction with them very, very quickly. So I think there are lots and lots of opportunities in the crowd model that apply to the screen sector as they do to all other sectors. And there are so many good examples in there. I mean, Taika Waititi used crowdfunding effectively to get a US release of Boy, one of his 2010 film. So, you know, people that have gone on to be very, very established and well-recognized participants in the sector have made use of this and made use of it very, very effectively. So I think it presents a number of opportunities for the screen sector, and we can look at other sectors to understand where they might be. That was quite a long answer, Ian. I apologize.
But it's a very helpful one. Thank you. I think obviously finance is something that has come up regularly, and clearly there's some challenges there. But I think this idea of looking at what rethinking who your partners are, who you're collaborating with, and who you can collaborate with is definitely important. The other one
is, can I say something on finance, Ian? I'm sorry, I'm jumping in again, but can I say something on finance? What I think is really interesting in the report that you produced, and I was actually reading an interview with Melvin Bragg the other day, who was making the same sort of point about the value of the creative sector in the UK economy more generally, and how it is actually demonstrably more valuable than lots of other highly regarded sectors, be it aeronautics and car manufacturing, God knows what else. What strikes me about screen in particular is there aren't the investment vehicles that there are for those other sectors, which seems kind of odd when those other sectors have well-established investment vehicles that are looking to invest in those types of those particular sectors, but they don't traditionally go to a sector that has consistently outperformed those competing sectors over the post-war period. And I wonder why that is. What is it? Something about the way that this is regulated? Is it something about the way that it is taxed? Is it something about the way that it is monetized and returns money to investors? I don't know, but I'm certain that there is a fantastic case that could be made for different investment vehicles to actually get involved with the creative sector. And you've seen some changes recently in the music sector, with musicians selling back catalogs and all sorts. So I think there are possibilities here, and crowd finance might form part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's clear there's challenges there, but I think one of the problems about all these figures that are, when they come to UK-wide and the size of the creative industries, is that a lot of it is based on a small number of people and a small number of businesses, and that the reality of that investment is very different if you're Sony walking in than it is if you're a small independent filmmaker. But the principle still lies the same, and we have been talking to angel groups and others to see about how we can get them to take more of an interest, to actually come to the networking meetings, to turn up, meet more of the independent producers, and start looking at what might be possible there. I think the other one I would say is again coming back to this idea of brands and commercial partners, and looking at where your story and their story crosses, and then what these opportunities are. And again, that comes back partially to the crowd economy models, comes back to these different platforms, but how they're going to. I noticed, Ken, sorry, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Just wanted to talk to the finance point that you made there. So there are some organizations that are looking at the creative industries as an investment, the challenges around investment, and in fact, yesterday I was having lunch with the team who work within within creative, and I have to be careful here because they call themselves Creative UK, but actually it's Creative England rebranded, and they have an investment arm there, and they're trying to structure finance. They have about £35 million under management. They're trying to get up to the 50 to 100 million range. There are investment groups in different parts of the world. For example, in Sweden, there's a $500 million fund, which is exclusively for the music industry. There's an investment group called IPR.VC, which is based in Finland. So there are people who do invest. They find it very difficult. The other thing to bear in mind is that the actual expression angel investors comes from the theatre world, and that the angels were those who invested into Broadway productions. So one of the issues, and this is an entire discussion, is the appetite for investment and risk in the UK. What we've created through the angel syndicates is a highly risk averse and very tax heavy kind of incentive scheme. So people don't risk their money. They actually look at ways to place their money with something that will give them an opportunity to offset their tax. And actually they don't judge the risks on things. They just judge the fact that they get their tax position. So there's definitely a lot of education to be done on the one side, which is the investment side. But on the other side is us, the investee companies, and there's a huge amount of work to do on that side. So there's literally a chasm between the creative industries, companies and practitioners, and the investment community, and they're practically talking two different languages. And so what we need to do is actually to educate and inform on both sides, and actually the pathways to investment are the things that need to be looked at. I think that that might be through education in higher education to start with, but actually going to the leadership within the community is actually where it needs to be done. So organizations like Focus, which I'm on the advisory panel and have participated in, are one example of, we should be steering our media companies towards Focus, because that's a way of actually getting them upskilled, aware of business plans, mergers and acquisitions, all the stuff that actually is part and parcel of becoming an investable company, at least having the appetite and understanding for it. So there's lots to talk about around that. And I'm not sure this is the platform for it or not, but there's a huge amount that I could talk to on that. So I'll just stop there.
Brilliant points though, Ken. Really, really good points. And again, I'm not a screen person, but those challenges are not unique to screen. So there may be things to be learned from other areas as well. But on your angels point, Scotland, according to the OECD, has the highest concentration of angel investors per population in Western Europe. So,
and they put all their money into tech, biotech, fintech, tech, oil and gas, property, and they run a mile from anything to do that's got creative attached to it. So there's a real sort of there's a real PR problem that we have. And one of the main issues around that is that there's some very savvy producers who work in the film sector predominantly, who go out, raise a ton of money from private individuals and then burn them. And that has happened historically because of the tax structures that we had, for example, sale and leaseback, which was a disaster, and it poisoned the well. And so we're all kind of classified as being clowns, and and it's just unfortunate because there are those people who are maybe a bit savvier and a bit more street smart that go out and raise money effectively, but they're useless producers, and they're terrible people, and they blow it for the rest of us. So and I've seen that over the last 30 plus years. So anyway,
do you know to add to sorry. Questions like we're not, but to add to that, I'm hearing a couple of things, and I just wanted to contextualize it because I know we have people coming from companies, and we have independent filmmakers here, and we have screenwriters here and filmmakers. Hi, Beatrix. There's like people at different points and sizes, and I think it's not like the Goldilocks principle applies. I think what we're talking about applies to you wherever you are in your career with this. I'm hearing a couple of things. First, this is a project-oriented industry. And I think that's important to highlight because you have investments in projects, you have investments in the company, umbrella company itself that houses those projects. And then you have huge areas of either feast or famine. And that depends on what's going on with the industry. Currently, the industry I know is super slow. It's a combination of the writer's strike, COVID, other things happening. It's not picked up in LA yet, and LA was funding a lot of the productions that were happening in Scotland. And I think everyone's saying that Netflix, Amazon, all these companies are going to say yes to more commissions starting in 2025. So you have a host of different things that affect people wherever they are on the food chain of this. And I just want to highlight again that there are certain commonalities between project-oriented industries, certain financial challenges. And one of them is, how do you survive the famine times? Another one is, how do you get investment in the projects that you have in development? Also, how do you create really strong relationships with distributors when perhaps, especially in Scotland, when perhaps some of their preferred distributors are based in London, some of the post-production houses, I think we were talking, Nigel, you mentioned that post-production houses are in London. And there's a couple of answers, I think, that came up in our envisioning group that I just want to throw out there, and these are broad brushstrokes. One of them is the idea of connection through story. I cannot tell you how important it is that if you are creating, this is about one project. If you're creating a story, for example, we're creating a story at the moment, happens to be an animation project, and we found that there's a huge amount of buy-in from NASA because there are similar aims that the story has that they have. And whether it's educational aims, whether maybe I'm an American and don't shy away from this so much because of this, but if their brand aims in the same way, where they don't really care about the IP that you're building, just want to place their brand, it's almost like the new product kind of placement. And for example, a friend of mine is starting a company that basically accelerates the production of books that are very subgenres. So we were talking before this call started, there's subgenre getting created that's like monster romances that are very spicy for women, usually between the ages of like 20s to like 60s. Women are liking this kind of mixed monster genre, but it takes place at what they would call cozy locations, like an inn. And I have to say, if folks knew that ahead of time, there could be museums in Scotland that would try to get their objects into these stories. There could be places in Scotland that would want to have a buy-in in terms of location because the story is very powerful, but they don't care about actually owning the IP. So who invests in projects is completely changing. The idea of, just going to people who want to invest in film or TV is not true anymore. And I think what really came out of our envisioning group was there's a huge amount of strength in going to areas that you wouldn't necessarily normally think invest in film or TV projects. Another example is someone in the envisioning group is part of a group called Mint Ventures. There is real parallels between women entrepreneurs and women producers in terms of some of the challenges they find in the industry, some of apparently, on the whole, women producers in film and women entrepreneurs always ask for less in an investment meeting than they actually need compared to their male counterparts. And through this kinship of challenges in the industry, there's actually like a growing number of women who vested in tech that now want to support women filmmakers. So the story is so important. You will never know where the kind of connections through that story takes you. And I think one of the things in the envisioning group that's so important to remember is if we keep on looking through that narrow bandwidth of who invests in film and we keep on going back to them, we're not moving with the times and we're not making the most of the resources that exist, especially in Scotland. We're a size where we can really make the most of those cross-aisle connections. So yeah, project-oriented industry and really broadening the vision of who invests in the actual projects. So the last thing I'll say is because it's a project-oriented industry, if you look at the gaps between your projects as potential room for investment, it will really create a predictable income for your company. And that is what Tim was talking about actually the process of what you're creating also becomes valuable. If you are comfortable with it and you let people into that process of making, that actually can become an income stream in itself. Sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you, Jessica. Just looking at the time, what I would say is we'd encourage everybody, if you haven't, is download the report and have a look. There's a lot of the information there. Again, just to remind you that my email address is up there because we would like to hear from you, because it's certainly not the case that everything is going to be sorted just by looking at this report. So I'm definitely be interested to hear back from you. Can I ask, has anybody else got any questions they would like to, or points they would like to raise?
I just wanted to say that was a really helpful insight of Jessica's, because I think as there's a sort of shift away, independent filmmaking is really disappearing. And alongside that, with all the discussion around the business of it and the investments and stuff, is a real constriction on creativity. This, you know, it's just sort of becoming much more suffocating to actually create work from the heart, which is the work that then is successful for audiences, because you're just becoming so constrained by all the regulations and expectations and stuff. And I think that notion of Jessica's, you know, like from the crowdfunder model and seeing people's enthusiasm to participate in your project and create your project, but actually to see that there's an opportunity for investors in between projects in the process. That's always been a really private, secret part of the work, and to be brave to open that up and take people on that ride. And I also thought that Ken's point about people being risk averse, I think we're more risk averse, broadcasters, everybody more risk averse than ever, and yet at a time when you need urgent growth, the thing you've got to do is take massive risks. And creative people live taking risks, living out of the comfort zone every single day. But it's very different to try and convince others to do that. So it's really helpful discussion. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Beatrix. Yeah, I'm afraid my screen froze up there and I couldn't call you in on that one. Well, looking at the time, I think we'll draw this to a close now. I think there's been some really interesting conversation. Again, thanks to everybody for attending and for feeding into it. If I can just remind you, my email's there. We would certainly love to hear from you. Any other thoughts and ideas? As I said, I can't guarantee that we can do everything, but at least we can have that conversation and see where it might be possible to do more and to work together. So I'm going to hand back to Gemma now.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed today's session and that you did find it a valuable use of your time, and we appreciate you coming along. So thank you very much indeed. Please do visit our website, www.exponorth.co.uk, where you can look at our events section and sign up to our newsletter to keep up to date with future events and news. Also on the website, we have our video archive with lots of extremely interesting content from previous recordings of workshops. The website is also where you will find our inquiry form for specialist sector support if you'd like to have a one-to-one chat with one of our specialists. In regards to social media, please make sure to connect with us on Facebook, X, also known as Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn. And once again, thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.